The British island of Montserrat lies in the heart of the Caribbean's Leeward Island chain. It's a tiny island, only 106 square kilometers, and with a population of a little over 9,000 people. Nature has been extravagant with Montserrat, and the island boasts tall, craggy mountains, lush valleys, steep waterfalls, and a dramatic coastline. In July 1995, the life of this island was forever changed when the Soufriere Hills volcano suddenly erupted to life, showering the capital with a dense ash cloud and causing fear and havoc among the residents.
The eruption of the Soufriere Hills volcano started on the 18th of July, or the surface activity started on the 18th of July 1995, following about 3 years of precursory seismic activity, intermittent over 3 years. And it started with steam eruptions from the central crater of the volcano and continued through with steam and ash eruptions up until the middle of November.
And we had something which was a new sensation. It was dry rain. There was something falling on you, but it wasn't wet. We couldn't see it in the dark, but that was our first experience of ash. And of course, over the following year, we got very used to the feel and look and taste of ash.
And then we went into the dome forming episode of the eruption. We started to get a new dome forming in the summit crater. The eruption, we've said all along that this eruption could be a long-lived eruption. Dome-forming eruptions in volcanoes similar to this are often long-lived. By that we could mean anything up to 10 years, although we expect the 1 to 5 year time frame to be more likely. The change to explosive activity on last Tuesday certainly hasn't changed that opinion, and it's probably enhanced the likelihood of further explosive activity, which impacts or could impact more fundamentally upon certain areas which are currently inhabited on the island.
The volcano continued its relentless growth, showering the island in volcanic ash and terrorizing inhabitants. Interpreting every rumble became critical. Was each ash cloud the precursor to a major eruption, or just the volcano clearing its throat? The government faced a dilemma: how to ensure the safety of its people and, at the same time, allow residents to go about their daily lives. Accurate scientific information became a vital tool in understanding the nature of the Soufriere Hills eruption and in safeguarding the inhabitants in the danger zone.
The seismic network we have at the moment is one brought in mainly by the US Geological Survey in the early days, who were funded by the ODA to bring in a system to set up very quickly and bring in the data processing for that. That's been up and running for over a year now, very effectively. It's been proven elsewhere in the world, and it's proved very effective here. And we're now just starting to put in a totally ODA-funded broadband seismic network, which we hope will give us even more insight into the seismic activity of the volcano and give us better precursory warnings to changes in style of activity. Some of the other equipment we use at the MVO includes deformation monitoring is one of probably the second major tool that we use. We've had electronic distance meter equipment, state-of-the-art, brought in by the ODA in September last year, and then we have a short occupation GPS global positioning system surveying network as well, which is also funded by the ODA. That came in April time, and that's now up and running as well. So we have a pretty comprehensive deformation network in place.
This rapid response became the hallmark of the ODA in the deepening crisis.
The Overseas Development Administration is the aid wing of the Foreign Office. It's probably best known for its development projects worldwide and indeed here in Montserrat. But from the start of this crisis, the Emergency Aid Department of the ODA was mobilised. It's a fast, rapid response unit designed to deal with rapid onset disasters. The island's communication system was previously housed on top of the volcano. It had to be moved if the emergency services weren't to be thrown into disarray. Building a new facility on a mountaintop without access or power presented a particular challenge. Nonetheless, with hard work and assistance from HMS Brave's Lynx helicopter, many tons of materials were taken to the summit of Lawyers Mountain. It was here that a new hurricane-proof facility was built. There was an immediate need to boost fuel reserves away from the bulk facilities under the volcano to the safety of the north. Landing supplies to the island also became a priority concern, so a plan to use landing craft evolved at a very early stage. Local diving teams were engaged to mark a rock-free navigation channel in the protected waters at Little Bay. A rapid construction program was then launched to provide a new jetty away from the volcanic threat.
Because the volcano is so dangerous in Plymouth, there's a possibility that people won't be able to use the port, and people in Montserrat have no way of getting on or off the island or getting any supplies on the island. So the ODA is going to put in a jetty for the people of Montserrat up here, probably in Little Bay. What's really wonderful is that they're not just going to slap in a jetty, they're coming out here to look at what the potential impact on the marine environment could be. So our job, the three of us, the marine team, is to go underwater and survey the marine life. And then we will go to ODA with recommendations on how to maintain the coral reefs around this area and how to enhance the fish life, how to enhance the fisheries. So our feeling of this area here is that it is an important nursery ground and that it's a feeder for some of the other areas further down the coast. So the fact that you have juvenile fish in here affects what's happening in the south part here and possibly further down as well, in terms of acting as a source population for fish, because the currents are taking them that way.
I noticed beyond the jetty there's a little space of land that goes around the bluff. I want to know if there's enough space and feeding grounds for the fish if they move from the jetty area around that side of the headland.
The two habitats are very different. This side of the bluff you have boulders with not as much water flow, a lot of little rocks and crevices that fish stay on when they're young. Around the bluff the reef is very different. You have different fish there. You have bigger fish out here. So there's more habitat for bigger fish. The habitat in here is more suitable for small juvenile fish.
We have to work with a contingency that at some point we may lose Port Plymouth. We may simultaneously lose the airport. So the ODA is funding a jetty which is to be constructed at Little Bay. We've had to accommodate at times up to 1,500 people in shelters, and the only buildings available in the northern end of the island have been churches, church halls and schools.
For the evacuated residents, shelters provided a roof over their heads, but little else in the way of home comforts. There were not enough beds to sleep in. Toilets and showers were in short supply, and people scrambled for washing and cooking facilities. There was little privacy for shelter occupants, forced to share accommodations with strangers.
Each family cooks for themselves. You do not cook. One person do not cook for everybody. Each family cooks for themselves and their children.
Okay, when we went into shelters, we were mainly using churches and schools, which we had as hurricane shelters, and they were only for 72 hours occupancy. But many people have been in shelters for up to periods of 6 months and more. And we have had, in the churches, the toilets were only built for the occasional use on a Sunday.
2 cesspool emptying trucks were purchased, and a new system for sewage disposal was introduced to cope with inadequate facilities in the shelters. The ODA, realizing that long-term accommodation was needed, purchased 20 steel frame homes. These were erected on government land in the safe zone, and they provided long-term housing for 400 people. At last, families had a refuge and could begin to rebuild their lives.
We were living in the grades primary school. You're living among different people. So because my family was very big, they were encouraging us to get at least 21 people to go in one of the shelters. And my family carried about the same 21 or 20. So I tried my best and I went to the bigger authorities and I asked if I could get one for the family. So I asked my mom, I asked my aunt, I asked all of them, are you interested in getting one of these buildings just for us? And then all of them agreed to come along with me, and I got one for them. And I tried to make them private by asking for screens to put husband and wives, to put your clothes on and things like that. And they joined with me, and I really had the chance to grab one for the family. So we live together, we try to share everything together and to make ourselves happy. So it's like living with your family is best because you know who you're living with, really.
That will make it not only livable, but in the position to carry on.
Here we are at Mungo Hill, and you can see a facility in the background, a shelter which is partially built by the Seventh-day Adventists. They got it up to roofing stage, most of the facilities going in, and we've had a request from the SDA to come on board and to help them to complete the facility.
Absolutely. I think the fact that the ODA is now receptive to not only develop plans from their point of view, but to encourage the private sector, it is very important. As a matter of fact, when I spoke with the governor, he was very excited to know what the community services of Seventh-day Adventist churches have been doing. We have taken an initiative. We have shown that we have the ability to do some things for ourselves, and they're very receptive to that, in so much that the governor himself has shown more than interest. He's gotten the ODA involved. He's brought Mr. John Adlam there, who is very receptive and understands what's been done.
So with some input from HMG, possibly in the region of £50,000-60,000, we've been learning today from Mr. George Piper that we could probably bring this facility on stream within 2 to 3 weeks, and that it would have a shelter capacity of up to 200 for overnight accommodation, possibly 150 under normal circumstances. And we're going to look to work with other church organisations, other NGOs in Montserrat, to see whether HMG can support them in their work of supporting their own community.
Plymouth, the capital town, was once the island's centre of life. Now, with its inhabitants evacuated, business and government offices closed, the town was silent. Only ash filled the streets and buildings. Eventually, roofs started collapsing under the accumulated weight of ash from successive eruptions. The island's planners faced a major problem. With all of the infrastructure in the evacuated area, new facilities had to be constructed for the island to function.
We're here in the yard of Glendon Hospital looking at the desolation caused by the volcanic crisis. As you can see, the yard is full of ash, which for those people who have seen countries in which there's snow, it's just as though there's snow on the ground. The only difference is that snow melts and ash doesn't. There's ash on the roof of Glendon Hospital. There's parts of the roof that have been cleaned off, and you see that these are looking clean. You see that there's ash piling up at the side of some of the buildings, making access difficult, and in fact this has caused water to go into some of the buildings, causing some damage inside. Now, we were just about to move into the hospital complex within probably a month and then the volcanic crisis started. After a while, it became impossible because of the ash and the affected conditions to operate the hospital in town. There was just too much dust, too much disruption, and we had to move to St. John's, to a school which we have converted into a hospital. We're now at the St. John's Hospital site. The ODA has funded the improvement of this facility, which means we're going to re-roof it, we're going to improve the windows and the doors, and we're going to make additions with the necessary toilets, sluice areas, bathrooms, and so on to make the patients and nurses more comfortable.
The loss of the cemetery, for example, is a critical thing. The loss of Sturge Park, a major recreational facility, is another aspect. Thompson Fields. The list is quite endless, but generally when you look to see what has been denied access to, it really is quite a long list and covers all sectors. All the prime agricultural land is centered around the South Soufriere Hills.
Yes, we'll do that. So if you could,
Plymouth is a place that we always thought that we could get back into, but as you can see that Plymouth every other day we get in asphalt, and we have to be back into Plymouth cleaning the roofs and what have you. So it looks as if we'll be still here for another year or so.
Our strategy is total relocation, total resettlement for all displaced persons and businesses.
I think Plymouth is finished.
A major volcanic eruption has the potential to cause serious injury. To prepare for this, the ODA brought in a team of experts to train volunteers in search and rescue techniques. After an intensive week of training, volunteers got a chance to demonstrate their skills in a simulation exercise.
Well, we've been asked to come to Montserrat, just a small team of fire service personnel under my direction, to set up the Montserrat rescue unit. They've been training now for a week on a number of skills that we felt that were appropriate to the circumstances in Montserrat. And today is a combination of putting all those skills together in the form of an exercise.
Roger.
They are now an integral part of the Montserrat rescue unit.
And I'd like people to try to be positive about the volcano. Another way of looking at it is we're seeing the birth of a new mountain.
We're a year into this crisis with well over 100 emergency aid projects completed. We have a number of others which are ongoing, but we've decided that it's now time to move on to the next stage. If one thing has become clear throughout this crisis, it is purely that Montserratians want to stay here. To that end, we've decided to launch a major development initiative, spending 100 million EC dollars, moving the infrastructure which is in the south of the island to the north. That's going to include more schools, more roads, completion of the work on the hospital behind us, a new port facility, a new fuel resupply facility. These are the things which are going to enable Montserratians to stay in Montserrat and to have a future here. Montserrat is certainly on the road to recovery.